I had trouble trying to write this, so I thought I would put it in a video. And in doing so, I have to say that it may or may not include everything that's in my head, and it may not be explained that well, but I hope that it gives you, as leaders, the sense of what and where I believe God is leading us as a church this year. Um, and at least gives you enough to pray about and discern so that we can discuss it at our servant leaders meeting next Thursday. So, with that, but you'll remember that back in September of last year, we agreed that our church's what? In other words, the reason for us being here, the reason why God asked us to plant here, basically has not changed in 23 years. And it's encapsulated in our vision, which we reaffirmed as transformed lives, homes, and communities through the good news of Jesus Christ. And you'll have heard me explain it this way. And then in November, we agreed that we would champion a strategy that focuses on encouraging, equipping, and empowering people to minister from their gifts and passions. And we spoke about the examples of hospitality and social assistance, which are passions that I believe many of our people share, including some of you, rather than necessarily identifying outreach ministries and trying to get people to be involved. Having agreed that, we left our November meeting with the question, but how do we do this? Since then, I believe that God has laid on my heart. In fact, that's not true. I know that God has laid on my heart a strategy, a desire to drive, maybe that's not the right word, but to really try and enable or at least give opportunities for our people to be deeply transformed themselves. Part of the strategy would be that we don't actually start any new ministries this year unless people come to us and go, I believe God is calling me to do this. And then we would assess it in terms of what we're trying to do. But we wouldn't try to start new ministries, and we just keep on with our current ones of youth, women's, and homework. But I believe that how to achieve that strategy, that point where people go, hey, I really feel like I want to do this or I want to do that, that God is calling me to do this, and I want to step up and do it. In other words, to equip and empower our people is through a discipleship focus throughout the whole church in 2024. And the aim, as I say, is to achieve deep transformation out of which people enthusiastically and proactively respond to God's call to outreach through ministry in whatever form that is. And we don't put any strictures, any parameters around that other than that it fits with who God has called us to be and is something that can be resourced, that we feel God will resource. This approach would be, I think, I'm thinking ideally would be a whole of church approach. It would certainly underpin our teaching throughout the year. It would be the focus of our preaching series. In fact, it may be the whole of our preaching series this year. Probably not, because I do want to also bring in parts of the church calendar, of course, such as Pentecost and celebrations like Mother's Day and Father's Day, and then, of course, there's celebrations, Easter, Advent, and so forth. But certainly a major portion of our preaching series. I would hope that it becomes the core focus and the core work which is done within our transformation groups, that they take what we've been talking about and we really go in depth. But in all other ministries where there is teaching, this would also be the focus, and it would actually be guided by what we're doing through the preaching series and through the general teaching. I know that's going to require a lot of work, particularly from me, in resourcing that. And whether you feel that we can mandate that effectively or just strongly encourage it or what, I'm not sure. I personally think that we really need to be single-minded here and not allow anything to waver from this, so that people get a single focus. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. There'll be some of our people who really struggle with it. But for me, it's not about numbers. It's about what I believe God is doing, which is He's pruned our church, and He's pruning our church, and He's allowing new things to happen, new shoots. And I think that pruning, like what's happening already in Esk Valley and Napier, where there was such devastation, and now there are bumper crops that are foreseen. And I think that's the point. I mean, we may lose people right here and now, but in the end, there will be more people brought into the kingdom of heaven, and that's what it's all about. So I've been looking at a number of possible sources of material, and I just want to give you a brief touch of those. I'm not going to go into too deeply because I'm still working my way through them. There is the Emotional Healthy Discipleship course, which has been promoted by our national church, and in fact, which others have, like Joe and Brett, have already done some work on. It's a 16-week series. Potentially more with the depth of material, but it's designed as a 16-week series in two major parts. And it combines growing in love for God with growing in love for others. Its aim is to move the church forward by slowing the church down to multiply deeply changed leaders and disciples. That stuff, by the way, comes from their website. Another one that I've just found is Practicing the Way. And I'm just at the beginning of looking at this. This one says that it's a pathway for apprenticeship to Jesus. And in fact, the material I've started to read talks about not being disciples, but being apprentices and all that means. And what the material, the website says is that it's not that people don't want to become like Jesus, or that people aren't trying to become like Jesus. It's just that we don't know how to become like Jesus, and that we need a pathway to formation that fits with the modern era, fits with the 21st century. Again, this is at least 12 weeks, again, possibly more. And then there is the spiritual disciplines work, which I've done a little bit of work with over the course of the final message for 2023 and the first one of 2024, where I introduced a few things around this, and some of you were there for at least one of them. This introduces 62 different spiritual disciplines, and you can rush through them, but also to do them properly, I think would probably take at least 12 months, possibly even longer, or at least to really get into them and try them and get people practicing them, because they're the sort of things with these spiritual disciplines where, in my experience, having used these as part of a course, or I've been introduced to them as part of a course at Kerry, these are, we might look at it and read and go, oh, I'm not sure that's for me or not. But unless we try it and give it a go, we don't really know. And certainly for me, I know there were some that I went, yes, these are for me. There's also the possibility that we could weave this together into the other courses. And in fact, I'm even starting to think that maybe this discipleship series may actually be a combination of the three: the emotional healthy discipleship, practicing the way, and spiritual disciplines, which will, of course, require, in fact, no matter what we do here, it's going to require a lot of work from me. And that's okay, because I feel that's where I really, really need to put my focus this year is on this deep transformation of our church, really coming back to basics, and and I'll talk about more about that probably in our servant leaders meeting about what that will mean for some of the other things that we're doing. One of the things that I'm not sure about, but I'm tending more and more to, is that this is a series that I will preach and I will preach alone. There are reasons for that that I don't want to go into on this video, and perhaps we can discuss them at the servant leaders meeting. But it's, I think, a series for the lead minister to to take and to really drive and to be focused on. And so, what I'm asking of you is to take this away and take it to prayer. Please pray and discern what you believe God is saying about this. He may be saying yes, am I and confirming that what I'm hearing is right, or he may be saying, Peter's well out of touch here. I want you to give him this message, and I need to hear that message. If you believe this is not what we should be focusing on with our whole theme as a church, let alone as our preaching series, over the next 12 to 24 months, possibly, then you need to tell me. We need to hear that. We need to discern together.